Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha is Parsha Terumah. Terumah, as I'm sure many of you know, now means in modern Hebrew a contribution. And the Terumah, the contribution that the Jews have been asked to bring to build the Mishkan, this temporary sanctuary that would eventually be replaced by the Beit HaMikdash, was in fact completely voluntary. The Torah begins by saying, Me'et kolish asher yetvenu libo, from every person whose heart inspires him to generosity. Now, you may think that this is just like all charity, like Tzedaqqa, that people, give what they feel like giving as an act of, kindness, not as an obligation. But that's actually not correct according to Jewish law and Jewish tradition. The Tzedaqqa, the monetary payment that people were expected and required to give, support the poor, and to support certain public institutions and projects, was regarded by the halacha as more of a tax than as a contribution, and with the consequent legal tools at the time that we had Beit Din that could enforce them, to basically force or forcibly take from people what they were asked to give. The Rambam tells us that if someone had not, had not given the share that the Gabbai Tzedaqah, those people in charge of deciding, how much each person should be asked to give, if someone did not give their full share, the people, the agents of the Beit Din, could actually go into their house of these people, and even on Erev Shabbos, seize, put a lien on property. They could come to this rich person's house and take the silver candlesticks that he had inherited from his great-grandparents and hold them as surety until this person paid up whatever he was supposed to give. And the status of these charitable, I would say call them contributions, but these charitable payments people were asked to make, was that of a loan or a mortgage. The Radbaz says that the Yordim Nechasav, it's like any other monetary debt obligation, where the court can put a lien on the property of the person who owes money until that person pays up. And the Kesef Mishnah also says it's just like any other monetary obligation. It's a chov. It's not reshut. But not so the contribution, the trumah that the Jews were asked to give to the Mishkan. And the question is then, why not? What was so special about the Mishkan that the Torah wanted it to be specifically money that was given out of spontaneous free will? Well, to answer that, can turn only once again to our great Rav Soloveitchik and this wonderful commentary, the Chumash Masoret HaRav, that's been published over the last few years, bringing some of the Rav's insights into the Parsha. The Rav has an explanation which fits very well the existential philosophy which he had absorbed in his youth, and which has its expression in, especially even the title, The Lonely Man of Faith, man's existential loneliness, and man's finding relief for this loneliness only in the company of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so the Rav says, and I'll just read a few sentences and say a few things on my own. The Rav says, man is basically a homeless being. No matter how large and opulent is his home, he is exposed, subject to the vicissitudes of life, subject to nature, subject to an inscrutable future. There is only one home where man gains security, and that's with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God, who calls himself Ma'onah Elohei Kedem. Ma'onah meaning an abode, a place of dwelling. The only home where man can find security is the Ribono Shel Olam. And for this reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, don't take the money for the Mishkan by force. Because the only way God will, kiviyachol, agree to come down and put his Shekhinah in the Mishkan is if he knows that the money that went into the construction of the Mishkan was given freely by the people. It has to be a free act of giving on the part of the people to make this Mishkan a place that's worthy for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come. As the Rav says, I'm quoting again, for God to descend from infinity into a Mishkan built by man is kiviyachol a sacrificial act on his part. This act of self-contraction was a sacrifice. He was willing to make a sacrifice, but only if the people themselves wanted a Mishkan and were willing to contribute to build to it. So the Rav is taking care of this idea that we've had, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu makomo shel olam, not the other way around. The whole world cannot encompass him. And when Shlomo Melech built the Beit HaMikdash, he said, "Hein hashamayim u'shmei hashamayim lo yechal kalucha." The entire heavens are not enough to contain God, and yet God has willingly decided to restrict his Shekhinah to this very small space between the Kruvim and the Aron. But this can only be done, or the Kadosh Baruch Hu will make this act, which the Rav calls a sacrifice, to sort of sacrifice his infinity for the very finite space of the building of the Beit HaMikdash and the Mishkan. If we freely give of our resources, if we want it, we have got to really want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be within our midst and show our desire, bein hashar, among other things, by contributing through the Mishkan, and only then will Kadosh Baruch Hu agree to have his Shekhinah dwell among us. Here ason shetachzor Shechinato l'shvot beinenu u'beit mikdashenu. Amen. Selah.